Hey guys, so this is an intro to the intro. I just want to say ahead that when I recorded the audio for this video, I recorded it back in late March. It is now on my laptop, June 16th. So I'm making this bit specifically because Taz Abnormals has finished. And I make claims in my abnormal section of this video that it has not finished, but I want you guys to be aware that I know it is finished. I have been keeping up with it. I have listened to the finale, and yeah, basically my opinions about the show has not changed that much from what I said in the video audio recording that will be played later. But I just wanted to give a heads up that I know Abnormals is finished, and I am so sorry this one took forever. I had to draw 21 pieces of art just for this video because I am a mad person, apparently. Other than that, also, I have listened to the first episode of Taz Royale, but will not be talking about it in this video because we only got one episode, and I would prefer to wait until there are more episodes before I decide to make a recommendation about a podcast. But from what I heard from the first episode so far, I am excited to see where it goes. It looks very fun. Anyway, I'm not going to keep this intro to an intro longer than it has to be. So, yes, I am aware that Abnormals is finished. I know they are on season 8 right now. That is all. Daryl Recommends Podcast is a podcast recommending series and shouldn't be mistaken as a reviewing one. Opinions about each show are my own and should not reflect what each show has to offer. Content warnings aside, I believe if any recommendation in my series interests you, you should give it a chance, regardless of how I personally feel about the show. And this one is going to be a little different. As you can see, I have not cut straight into the audio, and that's because the show I am recommending today is The Adventure Zone. If you don't know what The Adventure Zone is, The Adventure Zone is a tabletop RPG podcast where these three brothers who are known as the McElroy brothers, they do other podcasts, play Dungeons & Dragons with their dad. And they don't just play Dungeons & Dragons, they've also used other tabletop RPG systems like Blades in the Dark and Monster of the Week. But they're typically known for their D&D games. And this one's going to be a bit different because currently The Adventure Zone is 7 seasons long, but each season has its own storyline, and they also have spin-off little mini seasons. So I figure how I'm going to do it is I'm going to treat each individual season as its own thing, but use the beginning part where I, do my typical intro bit to explain the show in general, and then give my opinion about each season separately, because like I said, you could skip around and listen to different seasons of The Adventure Zone without having to listen to other ones. When I did my re-listen for this video specifically, I only re-listened to seasons 1, 2, and 4 because seasons 5 and 6 had just happened so recently that they were still kind of fresh in my head. Season 7 is still ongoing, and we don't talk about season 3. But I will get more into that when I actually get to talking about every individual season. As for the Adventure Zone itself, the show is very good. This was probably my very first podcast, so it has a little special place on my heart. And the storylines, the storylines that I will be talking about, some of them are super good, some of them are a bit hit and miss. But each of them kind of have their own strengths and weaknesses, and I just think it's a fantastic show. And one that I always end up having to be in my top podcast for the year's list, but mainly because episodes are usually about an hour to sometimes an hour and a half long. The more recent ones have been a bit shorter and reach to the hour to 45 minutes range, but most of the time it's usually about an hour. So if you want a little bit of a commitment of a show, this is one of them, but if you like tabletop RPG podcasts, and you haven't listened to The Adventure Zone yet, then, what are you doing? But yeah, no, I really like the show a lot. There isn't too much I can really say about it because, like I said, a lot of each season has its own thing, and each season I have a different opinion of versus, other ones, but we will be getting into that. And as you can see here, I drew a bunch of art for it that's been kind of cycling through because I drew a lot of art for this video. Anyway, I hope you enjoy, and we will be getting into our first recommendation. We will be getting into our first season of The Adventure Zone.
That's
I didn't know we do sound effects.
Yeah, no, it's hovering. So our story actually starts with the three of you, and you guys can establish, if you want, how Magnus and Taco and Merle know each other.
Craigslist.
which is actually a list that a gnome named Craig puts up on a tree every day
At a tavern, perhaps.
Want to make friends? Join my list. Pin thy name here.
M for M. I've got a hungry butt over here, looking for a young stud, a young dryad. Fantastic.
Are you dryads down to clown?
So you find each other on Craigslist. Maybe you've been doing some odd jobs around. The economy's in the shitter, and you have a hard time doing work that does not involve goblins and or skeletons. Travis, your carpentry is... Nobody wants chairs nowadays. People are more into iron rot things.
Iron's going to go out.
Yeah.
Gonna go out of fashion. People will be back into wicker.
Bronze Age is going to end sometime, right? Mm-hmm. And then it's going to get retro back into wood. So the three of you have done a few jobs together, probably.
Taco, Magnus, and Merle join the Bureau of Balance in order to retrieve the world-ending Grand Relics. As they recover more relics, a bigger mystery begins to surface, and everything they thought they knew may change forever. Taz Balance is the very first season of Taz, and is probably the one that everybody knows the most. If you don't know, if you've ever heard of the Adventure Zone, chances are you probably heard of the Adventure Zone specifically because of this season. This is the season that kind of set a lot of the tone of what a lot of the storytelling that the McElroy brothers are known for, have. So Taz Balance is really good. It's definitely one of those first season of a show. The creators are trying to, especially an improvised show, the creators are trying to find their voice and figure out how they want to go about with the rest of the story. And it's very prominent through the first two arcs of Taz Balance, but I feel they start finding what they want to make the Adventure Zone be around, at least for Balance, around the third arc. And this one is really good. It's very funny. The characters in it are very memorable, and every storyline just stands out. This is also the only season of Taz that they have done that has its own comic series. So if you're not really into tabletop RPGs, but you are into the Adventure Zone, I would recommend reading the comics. They're generally very similar to the podcast with some changes that kind of clean up some storyline stuff and a little bit of character development that the show doesn't really have a lot of in the beginning, but that's mostly because, again, they weren't really at a point where they were figured out how they wanted the show to be at the beginning of Taz Balance, but it still does not take away from the fact of how amazing of a storytelling thing that Balance is. Griffin McElroy is a really good dungeon master, and the show just it balances its comedy with its serious moments really well, and it has probably some of my favorite moments in any tabletop RPG game ever. And it's definitely one of those shows that you could listen to, and if you're not into Dungeons and Dragons, could probably make you get into Dungeons and Dragons more. I didn't play a lot of Dungeons and Dragons before listening to Taz Balance, so there you go. And I like this season a lot too. It's very fantasy, but fantasy where it's kind of oh yeah, it's a little bit sci-fi, and they have a very interesting reason to why the world is a bit more modernized despite being a super fantasy world. And it's just very cool how they go about with doing it. I very much enjoyed it a lot. I also just love the characters. My favorite arc in Taz Balance is the 11th Hour, and I like all the NPCs. I love Roswell, and I love just that whole storyline in general. Time loop storylines are very good. And also, if you are somebody who wants queer rep in your show, this one's kind of paired with a little content warning for a trope that they kind of accidentally did. There's a lot of queer rep in the first season. There's like Roswell's non-binary, and then there's also a couple of queer characters in here. Some who like get in relationships with other characters. One of the main like player characters is a gay elf. Though I will have to warn you, they do accidentally do the bury your gays trope with their like very first introduced queer pair of characters. And I think it's so funny how they went about with it. Not like specifically the fact that they died, but specifically Griffin was like, "Oh, I did not know that was a thing." And then not only after that does he add more queer characters into his show, but he goes and he's like, "Oh yeah, let's also bring back the couple that I killed off in like an earlier season," and like one of the coolest ways ever. And like in the comics, they kind of retcon it slightly to where it's still very much like the same thing happens, but the reveal of like, oh no, they're not actually like perma-dead, they're just like different, comes back a lot earlier, because it's definitely like more near the end of the story did they like come back. So you'll understand what I mean if you go ahead and listen to it. But over for like content warnings wise for this season, it's your typical D&D violence. It's your like I said, your one chance of bury your gays trope that the show does have. Not a whole much else in terms of like anything particularly upsetting I can think of, in terms of like, comparing it to Malevolent, which I still think is probably like the most like content warnings heavy show I've recommended on this channel. Maybe either that or SCP Archives, it's one or the other. But overall, this is a very good show. It's got a very good ending. It's one of the best pieces of like audio drama storytelling that's out there. And even if you're not like super into D&D, I do recommend giving this season a listen, just because of how good it is and just how wonderful of a story the whole thing is. So if you want to go listen to a very good tabletop RPG story, you want to know what the hubbub about the Adventure Zone is, and you want to know if any of the other seasons are worth a listen, well, this is peak. This is just one of the best tabletop RPG stories that is out there. So go give it a listen. And yeah, and if you read the comics, also yay, I have all the comics. I'm very excited for the last one to come out. Anyway, we will be going on to the next season.
We see a carpet of pine needles laid out over the quiet floor of the Monongahela National Forest. Bright light is beaming down from the waxing, nearly full moon overhead. It is summer in Kepler, West Virginia, and it is still. In this particular neck of the woods, not a creature is stirring. The tall pines all around are motionless, bathing in this moonlight. There are no howls from the forest's depths, no frogs rattling in the creeks that crisscross the terrain, no crickets whistling their summer song. Kepler is quiet too. Its citizens have long since retired for the day. The steady hum of the funicular that connects the town to the ski slopes above ceased operations hours ago. Signs for the businesses catering to Kepler's night owls flicker and dim as their proprietors close up shop. Soft lights in the town's windows extinguish one by one, save for the office window of the Amnesty Lodge.
In Kepler, West Virginia, Aubrey, Duck, and Ed find the town's biggest secret. Monsters are real. Can they keep Kepler safe from the strange creatures that seem bent on destruction? Or will this secret become one too big to keep hidden forever? Taz Amnesty is the Monster of the Week game that Griffin ran after they had finished Balance. Between Balance and Amnesty, they ran 3 mini-campaigns. They ran a mini-campaign for Taz Commitment, which was DM'd by Clint McElroy. They ran one for Taz Dust, which was made by Travis McElroy, which honestly I really like Taz Dust. That one also has like a second mini-season. It is very fun. I love Taz Dust. And then Taz Amnesty was the one that was DM'd by Griffin, and this is the one they went with for their second full season of Taz, because at this point, they had been running Balance for about 4 years. so they weren't really sure what they wanted to do next. So they did a little experiment, and Taz Amnesty ended up being the one they went for their second one. And of all the seasons of Taz, this is probably my personal favorite. I have a very, very soft spot for Taz Amnesty. I remember like listening to this season while I got my first job at the Bullseye store, and I was also taking driving classes, and so for like those 2 weeks, it would be me at work, then it would be me binging through Taz Amnesty while waiting for my driving classes to start, and then me walking home from the class binging through another episode of Taz Amnesty, and I did that for like 2 weeks straight, and oh my god, this season's just way too good. It is such a good season. It's got those like fun vibes, it's got great characters, I love the story arcs, I love the horror. Griffin said recently in like a Q&A between season 6 and season 7 that he doesn't really know how to do horror in the podcast, and like I haven't gotten the Ether Sea yet, but if you've listened to the Cambria arc in Ether Sea, Griffin, I need you to like sit back and go re-listen to Taz Amnesty, and then go re-listen to Taz Ether Sea, specifically the Cambria arc, and then I need you to look in the mirror and, I don't know, say something that will make you make a horror-themed Taz season, because I want to see that. And Taz Amnesty is just really good. It's got cool monster concepts, it's got cool monsters, it's a very like Monster Hunter sci-fi. It's a bit grittier and darker than Balance, but not too dark. It definitely, I love that Taz Amnesty so much. And I like how it like kind of combines its like sci-fi elements, and it's like monster hunting, like gritty horror elements without being too much like Alien or like Men in Black, or trying to think of another like sci-fi story like Star Trek. But Taz Amnesty is one of those ones that I love so much. It is such a good season. I got into the Taz story when they were like midway through this arc, so I listened to Balance the first time, saw that Taz Amnesty was like midway through it, and I was like, there's gonna be no way I'll be able to keep up with this. I will come back to this later. And then it wasn't until they started Taz Graduation that I was like, okay, fine, I'll get into Amnesty as well. So there's that. Taz Amnesty is just so good. It's set in West Virginia, which, if you know me, I love that. And it's set in like a small like ski resort towns where people go when they want to ski during like, you know, skiing season. And one of the main player characters, Ned, he runs like a cryptology museum. Duck is a park ranger for the Monongahela Forest. National Forest. I forgot the full name of it. I'm very sorry. It's like 8 in the morning. And Aubrey is a magician who finds out that she has magical powers. And it's just overall, I love the like storylines that they go for with these characters. This is definitely a bit more of a polished, like thought out story than like beginning of Balance was. It feels more cinematic. I don't want to make it seem like I think Balance wasn't you know, balanced, but I had to do it. But like in terms of like like how putting together a story and putting together characters with like motivation and like storylines and tying it into the main storyline of the season, this is definitely a bit more on the like they got their shit together. It's kind of like the short thing of saying the long thing I'm trying to get to. And that's what I appreciate with Amnesty. Amnesty, like, at least content warnings wise, it's got like your kind of like typical horror stuff. It does have like some fucked up stuff. Like, one of their arcs has like gore without gore. It's hard to explain it without a little bit of spoilers, but let's just say, imagine like extreme, like, you guys ever seen those screenshots from like Chinese censored like anime, and it's like a scene with like a lot of blood, and they like color out the blood with like a completely different color so it doesn't look like blood. Imagine that. That's Taz censored gore. And it's just the season is so good. It's got my favorite Taz character in general in it. His name is Billy. I will not give context outside of that because him showing up into the show is very funny as like a major character. It's very great. But if you like, if you like my webcomic and you like small towns full of monsters, you should go listen to Taz Amnesty. Just saying. And if you listen to Taz Amnesty and you haven't read my webcomic, you should do that as well. Anyway, so now we're going on to our next season of Taz.
This world has many names across her many lands, but my favorite is simply Nua. As the light from her sun crests Nua's horizon, we see what appears to be the beginnings of another ordinary day. A blessing of unicorns rouse themselves from slumber and begin to graze. Villages and towns come to life and hum with commerce and gossip. The fairies have wound down another night of revelry and are just settling into their forest beds. All across Nua's face, rooms of royal accountants have already been hard at work for hours. Yes, everything appears routine and mundane, but it is not. You see, this isn't just another day. This is the first day of school. The light continues to spread, and we see its illumination touch upon a village. The true name of this village is Hope, but it's known by all the locals as Last Hope. You see, Last Hope is the final city before one finds themselves between a rock and a hard place in the form of the Godscar Chasm and the Unknown Forest. If you were foolish enough to stumble into this position, you may be surprised to discover
Hieronymus Wigginstaff's School for Heroism and Villainy has received its newest students in the forms of Sir Fitzroy Maplecourt, Argo Keen, and a Firbolg. With their arrival comes their own baggage, and a mysterious plot begins to be set in motion. So Taz's Graduation is the first season of Taz that was not DM'd by Griffin. This one was DM'd by Travis McElroy. And this is... okay, I'm gonna say that bit for later, but I'm gonna start with the goods. And that is, like, the good thing that I like about Taz Graduation is I love the world building in it. The world feels very thought out in terms of, like, how society is in this, like, world where it's, like, it's a job to be a hero or a villain, and, like, kind of like a superhero kind of way, but also, like, not, like, it kind of feels like being a contractor, but they tie it into being a superhero or a supervillain, and you could just go to school to be both, and, like, everybody's just, like, chill about that. And I find that fascinating. I also kind of, like, I like the idea that it doesn't go too very into, like, other, like, kids with superpowers go to a magical fantasy school, because, you know, this is like a magical fantasy world, so that's not super unique. It's just like, this is like a career path you can have if you want to be a superhero or a supervillain. And I also just, like, I don't know, like, the fantasy vibes for this one's definitely a bit more, like, on the fantasy side than the first two seasons of, well, I mean, I that wouldn't be fair to say for Amnesty, but more so for, like, Balance. Like, this feels more of, like, a fantasy world and less of, like, the fantasy sci-fi that Griffin went with Balance. And I think this season could have been a little better. This season, it was not that good. It's the characters are very interesting. The NPCs are they're very interesting. My issue with Taz Graduation is that, like, it feels like there is too much and they don't focus on the important parts of it. And that's kind of a little bit hard to explain. So, I will explain like this. The first half of Graduation seems to follow one plot, and then halfway through it, it switches to a different plot. And, like, the two plots converge near the end, but to me, I feel like would have made Graduation better is if they did what they're planning on doing with Ether C, which we will get to Ether C after this one, is that they made Graduation focus on the first plot, the plot that they like seem to be following. Focus on that, focus on the school stuff for that, and then later revisit Graduation with the last half of the things when it was more developed. Because I feel like once they introduce the second plot, that's when things start going downhill. And considering I think Travis said that he came up with that plot literally the episode before they started it, it kind of shows a little bit, not gonna lie. I'm not saying this is like a personal thing for Travis being a DM, because he is DMing the current season of Taz, and like I said, Dust is one of my favorite seasons. I very much enjoyed the world of Dust, which is this like monsterish, like cowboy-esque world. It's got like magic, but like supernatural magic and things like that, and I love the setting for Dust, and I love the like concept for it, and I think those seasons are very fun. The Graduation just was not good, and you know, you're never going to run into a perfect, like, you're never always going to have, like, a perfect D&D game. And considering that Taz Balance and Taz Amnesty are arguably like two of the best seasons of the Avengers Zone. It's definitely a very tall mountain to climb. But I don't want to make it seem like I think Graduation is entirely horrible. I just felt like Graduation could have been a bit better if it was thought out more. Just definitely, like, I feel like it's like a, like, lesson in, like, DMing is if you want to have your big epic fantasy story, narrow your scope a bit more. And if you can justify continuing on with more stuff, do it then. But only after you kind of figure out, like, your first set. Like, if you're gonna have one major plot line, unless you could, unless you could, like, figure out how to add into that second bigger plot line, don't do it. I feel like an example of this that, like, does it kind of good is, Critical Role's first season, Vox Machina. I'm not finished with that one, so I don't know how it ends, but at least where I'm at, it's like, yeah, I mean, you guys been hinting at this for a bit, so now it makes sense that you guys are gonna go at this. I just finished, like, if you watch the TV show, I just finished, like, a little bit past, like, where the show currently ends at, so that'd give you an idea of how far into Critical Role I am. It's been, like, over a year, and I'm still not caught up with Vox Machina. Anyway. But yeah, I mean, I don't want to make this part, like, seem like, oh, Graduation's all bad, because, like I said, I enjoyed a lot of the characters, I enjoyed the setting, I feel like the story is what kind of kills it in the end, and there's some other stuff that people definitely were not happy with. Personally, like the Centaurs thing that goes a little bit into, I forgot the specific word, but like, I want to say like Orientalism, but I don't think that's right, but like basically like a stereotyping of like indigenous groups, and then there's the, and then there was like the one time they had one of the professors like force a couple of students to take drugs, which is not great, but you know, you could decide yourself how you feel about that. That I just know that, like, at the time, people were like, whoa, that's a very weird direction for it. And there's also just, like, a ton of characters. Like, the ones they focus on are really great, but there is a ton of characters, which is, again, going back to if you're trying to DM, like, a fantasy thing, especially, like, for, like, something with a storyline, it might be best to, like, narrow your scope a bit. Because, like, big, grand, epic quests are great and all, but I think there's a difference between dungeon mastering for, like, a TV show or, well, I say TV show as if you're watching this, for a podcast versus, I've been watching a lot of What's Left of Us recently, but, like, difference between dungeon mastering for a D&D show that people are watching versus, like, doing something with your friends, and this feels like something that would have been a bit more suited towards the latter rather than the former. But I also think Graduation could have been a bit better of a season if they just focused on the first plot and then came back to it like they are doing with Ether Sea, which, by the way, that's the next season we're going to be talking about.
A Brief History of Our Wasted World. A Primer by Brother Seldom. I have witnessed firsthand the deep and restful slumbers that my sermons have induced amongst our congregation, so I will attempt to keep this succinct. Should you find yourself dozing off during this lesson, well, I wouldn't worry too much. By the time you hear this, the world I'm about to describe will have long since been scoured from the map. Let us begin with the vestiges. One could accurately describe them as gods, though they'd certainly prefer not to be called as such. When they crossed over into our world eons ago, some of our ancient ancestors considered them patrons. Others found them to be merciless oppressors. Civilizations sprouted around these beings' feet, and immediately, and perhaps unsurprisingly, they began vying for superiority. For all their differences, though, the vestiges that claimed
At the end of the world, the citizens of Founder's Wake found refuge in their underwater city, thriving 25 years after the flood. The Ether Sea provides many opportunities, and Devo, Amber, and Zooks of the Coriolis are ready to see what it has to offer. Taz Ether Sea it's another one that's, like, again, based off the system for D&D 5e, but this one is very unique. So what they did with this is that Griffin came up with a world and came up with a calamity, which is there's this giant maelstrom in the ocean, and, you know, set the stakes. In a year's time, the world is going to flood. And they played a game called The Quiet Year to determine what this underwater city and society is going to be like, and they used the details from that game to add on to the storylines for the rest of this season. And this season is kind of like a first-parter because they plan on revisiting it. Ethersea has a good ending, but definitely ends at a point where it's like, oh yeah, there's going to be a lot more happening after this. So we're going to get a little bit into it. So they played the game The Quiet Year, and they set up the societies, they set up these different groups, they made some of the more major NPCs that show up in this, and they set into the different regions that, like, the different main societies that figured out their own ways of dealing with this gigantic calamity that was coming for them. Like, one group called the Einar, a bunch of them basically projected themselves into the spirit world, and a lot of the ones that got left behind got turned into these like coral people because they were basically ghosts, and this was their way of like bringing them back into like the physical world rather than existing as like poltergeists. There's another group called the Delmar who essentially locked themselves up in a mountain. We don't really see them in Ethersea, but you know, maybe for the next part whenever they get to it. And then there was another one called the Southern Archipelagos, who become nomadic seafarers, kind of like how Founder's Wake is, except Founder's Wake is more stationary. And the plot with Founder's Wake is that they heard a voice that tells them to meet up on this beach and to make a city underwater where they will thrive. And that is what they end up doing. And so the story for the actual main game, Ethersea, takes place 25 years after that, so we're focused on Amber, who is a character who was actually there when Founder's Wake was made, and she is a monk who, I love her to death. She is just beautiful character, one of my favorite characters Justin plays as. There is Devo, who's like, he's on the younger side, he was born after the end of the world, and he is a little shit. I bring up Devo and Amber because I love how Justin and Travis play as them, because it's very, listening to it at the time, it's very much just like, Devo kind of sucks, Devo's being an ass, but it's like also like, well, that's kind of the character game that they're playing with these two characters, because like Amber's like the big, tough, knows her way around things, knows, like, has that life experience, and Devo, his whole thing is literally, he's just like, I've been stuck in, like, a room my whole life, and I'm finally out of it, and I'm so pissed off I've been in my room this whole time. It's very fun. It's like, one's a little shit with trauma, and the other one has trauma, but she's just kind of, like, rolling with it. And then there's Zooks, who is, like, even the bigger baby of the group. He is a Einar, but they call them Brynar when they are in the coral bodies. And he is just trying to find his own way of things and trying to figure out how to be like a functional person in society. And he has an affinity for getting his brain put into animals. And I love Taz Ethersea so much. This show is just... This season is so underrated, and I am so upset it's so underrated because this season is so good. I love the like post-apocalyptic underwater society thing that they cooked up with this. Whatever they were drinking, I need it. I'm so upset this season is not, I'm clapping my hands so much, but I'm so upset that this season is not as liked as a bunch of the other ones, because Ethersea is just so good. And like when I did my re-listen, I was like, is this season gonna be like as good as I remember listening to it as it came out? And it was so good. And I'm like sitting there and I'm like, the season needs more love. Please love Taz Ethersea with me. And I was like talking with a friend about it, and she said like she thinks the reason why Taz Ethersea doesn't get as much attention as the previous seasons is because of Graduation, which is fair. But listen to me, hey, listen. If you did not like Taz Graduation, go listen to Ethersea, please. I need more people to like this season with me. I love Taz Ethersea. I love it. And like I said it before, and like when I was talking about Taz Amnesty, but Griffin writes one of the most horrifying story arcs in Taz, probably the most horrifying story arc in Taz in this season. With it's the Cambria arc. I'm not going to go too much into like what happens in it. If you listen to Taz Ethersea, you know. If you haven't, if you do not like body horror, you probably will not like the Taz Cambria arc. It is not like gory body horror, but it is tons of fish-themed body horror. and it is horrifying, and it is so fucked up and so good. And it's like, Griffin McElroy, I'm putting hand sanitizer on my hands, but Griffin McElroy, if you listen to me, I am whispering in your ear, little man, re-listen to that arc, and like, whatever you were doing when you wrote that arc, do it again. You can make a horror season of Taz, please. I need it. I want it so bad. You have no idea how much I want more horrifying shit like that. I love Ether C so much. Whenever I talk about this, the current seasons of Taz with my friends, some of them are just like, I don't know, I kind of fell off of the show because I just didn't like Graduation, because it's, and I'm like, no, you need to listen to Taz Ether C. It is so good. The characters are so good. The world building is so good. The plot is so good, and they leave it off at like such a good note, and then just having like, it has like one, like, Travis just throwing down a fucking twist at the very end of Taz Ether C with Devo, that would be like such a beautiful tie-in to like, just like recontextualizing a bunch of stuff that has happened prior to that. It's just, it is so good. It is so good. And I'm like, I need the next season now. I need it now, Griffin. When is it coming? Because this, as you can tell, it's not here yet. Because there are still 3 more seasons of Taz that we have to get to, and I'm ready to talk about those because they're all very good in their own ways, but I need more Taz Ether C. Give it to me, please. I am on my hands and knees begging you, you beautiful, beautiful man, Griffin, please. Anyway, we're gonna be talking about the next season of Taz.
Hey friends, it's Crystal with a K with another Steepy Watch. Okay, so let's talk about Prize Pantry in Eustabin, which lets you unleash your inner Saturday morning maniac as you rifle through boxes of cereal until you find the incredible prize inside. But please do not eat the cereal. We know it's early to say that, but we really can't emphasize how important it is that you do not eat the cereal. The faux flakes may look like the real thing, but they are chemically indigestible to a degree that really is irresponsible. So don't eat the flakes. It's a really big day with the 150 years of dreaming festivities finally adding a little dream dust to Prize Pantry, one of our favorite spots that doesn't get the love it deserves. Beginning next week, customers of Prize Pantry may find more than a t-shirt or slap bracelet in their inedible breakfast because Dentonic Creationeers have created a one-of-a-kind enamel pin with the famous Dentonic logo and a gold embossed 150. It's so cute, and get this, gang.
Every amusement park empire has a hidden crime ring, right? Maltos, Beef, and Emmerich want a slice of the pie for themselves, but luckily for them, work in Steeplechase is easy to come by. Taz Steeplechase is their Blades in the Dark game that Justin McElroy was the one who ran this time. And this game is very Justin. It's very wacky, it's very wild, it goes all over the place, it gets very silly, it gets over the top, and I love it for what it is. It's not my personal favorite season of Taz, but it was so much fun. Like, so this season I wasn't super into at the beginning of it. Like, I couldn't get into it, and then like I waited for a bit. I wasn't planning on listening to the season. Just because, like, I feel like you have to listen to the intro episode. I ended up skipping it and jumping into, like, the very first episode. And, like, the plot just, like, starts. And I was like, whoa, what is happening? And I just couldn't get into it. And so I had a friend who was, like, talking about how much they love Steeplechase. And I was like, when does Steeplechase get good? And they were, like, literally after the first arc. So if you are very, very interested in Taz Steeplechase, this could just be a me thing. Like I said, the opinions about this whole video are my own opinions, so if you don't agree with me, you don't have to. But if you're planning on getting into Steeplechase and you really want to get into Steeplechase and you don't think the first, like, mission is good in terms of, like, listening to a story, then give it a chance, because it definitely picks up so much after that. It gets a lot better. The first one is very good, at least to introduce you to the world. It's a very sci-fi kind of, like, the vibes it gives me is just kind of like, hey, you know that whole, like, conspiracy theory about, like, Walt Disney's frozen head is, like, in Disney World? Well, what if it's a little more fucked up than that? And I love it. I love Griffin's character in this one. He's probably my favorite character in this. He is Maltos Pretty was he was raised by animatronics, and also just like the funny thing about this is they're playing as villains for this one, so it's not really like we're going around doing evil stuff. It's like we're criminals, we're doing things that benefit us and us only, and sometimes it benefits other people, but we're not the heroes in this story. And I think that was like a fun twist to it. It's like protagonists who are also villains, because that's just kind of like the general consensus for it. It's just like, we want to take over Steeplechase and become like these top dog criminals in this amusement park area that like a lot of crime happens in. And it was a very fun way of them doing that. And it's just, I think the story comes down like really good for it. It's like, I don't know, they had like a fantasy themed world with like, they got like characters who are like knockoff versions of like actual characters. Like there's knockoff Batman, there's knockoff Joker, knockoff Shrek as a character, but then they also got like one world that's basically knockoff Taz Balance, and they like tie into like some stuff that happens at the end of Taz Balance that you don't need to worry about if you haven't listened to Taz Balance yet, but you should listen to Taz Balance. But nothing that will keep you from enjoying the story of Steeplechase. So don't worry about that. None of the seasons I'm talking about now, you have to worry about listening to previous seasons in order to enjoy them. The only exception would probably be Ethersea, but like I said, that one hasn't gotten its second season yet. But if you like something that's a bit grittier, a bit I wouldn't say darker, but like sillier, like dark in a silly way, I would go with Steeplechase. If you like amusement park rides, if you like mysterious crime rings, if you like mobsters and things like that, I would go with Taz Steeplechase. I don't have too much else to say for this one, but it's just very good. It's very much just like a story of these characters just being like, how much crime can we do? And then like another character taking like an interest in them, and then being like, hey, what if you like took over the amusement park, and like going all over the place from there. So yeah, go check out Taz Steeplechase. It's also like Justin's like the only game that Justin DM'd for a main season of Taz. So, you know, if you want to see how he is as a DM, I know he did Taz Nights on their, like, I think it was the Maximum Fun Drive thing. It's like their form of Patreon. I'm not on it, and I haven't checked it out because money is very hard. But yeah, I know he did that one. So there you go. Or at least I think he DM'd that one. I'm not really sure.
Dear Diary, how come everybody wants to kill Dracula? I mean, the people whose villages I've razed to the ground, whose family trees I've so thoroughly pruned, them I understand. But how did my vulnerabilities become the topic of casual dinner table conversation? I don't talk about the weaknesses of mortal men, and Lord knows I could. I may be biased, but it seems these days that haters are coming at me left, right, and center, trying to snuff my candle. Well, fortunately, my light is not so easily extinguished.
Dracula is known as the most powerful being and possibly ever, unable to be killed or stopped in any way. Mutt, Lady Godwin, and Philo seem to think otherwise. Killing Dracula can't be that hard after all, right? So Taz vs. Dracula is their 6th season of Taz, and this one is a lot of fun because there's so much going on in this world. Griffin, who's the DM for it, it's a very short season. It's only like 30 episodes, but Griffin had set up this world to be like a world where like public domain novels exist in like this one setting. So you got like King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table. The Swamp Thing is there. I'm trying to think of other characters. Frankenstein is also a major character. And then they had like side stories that they do for live shows. So they did like a Moby Dick live show. They did one for recently. Their most recent one was for Romeo and Juliet, and they did like a bunch of other stuff. But for Taz vs. Dracula, this one's mostly focused on the 3 main characters, all of them having some kind of beef with Dracula, going off and trying to kill him. That's it. That is the plot of Taz vs. Dracula, and this one gets so fun in like a silly way. This one's definitely like the closest to like another horror-themed Taz they've done, but this is like kind of like horror in a silly way. It's not horrifying, has like how Taz Amnesty and Taz Ethersea would sometimes get horrifying, but it's definitely like a lot of fun. So they are in essentially a permanently dark world because Dracula killed the sun. And he's just able to go around, and every time they kill him, he just seems to keep coming back, so they're like trying to figure out how to actually perma-kill him. And I think with the season, it's definitely one that, it's very short, it's not super like, has a ton of stuff going on, but it's fun for what it is, and that's like what I can enjoy about it. And it's also like, it's also got like one of my favoriteest gags ever. I don't want to spoil it because when it happened, it like caught me so off guard, but it was so funny. Just when you get to the conference, when you get to the swamp monster part of this, that's your sign that it's coming up, and I will not explain anything else more than that. But it's just so good. It's just a funny season. They had like werehorses. Mutt was like a werecat for a little bit, and it's just great. This one's also one of their like most recent seasons, and I love like the live shows that they keep doing with it. They keep revisiting these characters, but in a way that doesn't feel stale because each new storyline is like a small condensed thing. Like I said, they take other public domain novels, and they were like, okay, we're gonna do another storyline based off this, but it's gonna be only for the live shows. And I think that was like a fun way for them to do it. And I enjoyed like the character storyline. Philo's definitely like the one who's like, his beef is less so permanent with Dracula, but it's also really funny what happens to him very early on in the storyline, I may add, because it's like, oh, here's this old guy, he is now a little wooden boy. It was so, and like, especially with stuff that's like unplanned, that just become like a permanent comedic thing like that. It's so good. It is so much fun. So if you like public domain novels and you want to see them like, as somebody who's writing their own story that also involves public domain novels, if you love something like that and you like it taken into like a more like Halloween Town vibe aesthetic, then this would be the kind of story for you and the kind of season of Taz to listen to. And with that in mind, we're going to jump into our last season of Taz that we will be talking about.
Today marks the 20-year anniversary of the last reported sighting of the Greenback Guardians, seen defending the streets of River City from the volatile pairing of criminals and crime. Even after many other animal teams have taken up their mission to keep the people of this city safe following the convergence of 2010, has any team truly been able to fill the void that the Guardians left behind? The citizens of River City say no. But tonight, those same citizens may sleep a little easier. River City has unveiled a shining tribute to heroism. 4 statues in the shape of those beloved Greenback Guardians themselves: Lamar, Lovelace, Newton, and Carver, all lovingly rendered in 10-foot-tall golden glory and keeping eternal watch over the city streets to the north, south, east, and west. The monument is a new permanent addition to River City's famous entry pavilion and celebrates not only the heroes of yesteryear, but the opening night of the History of Heroes exhibition in the museum's West
Maybe
Wing.
Lyle and Roger are prepared to do what it takes to become the newest, biggest crime-fighting team in River City. Tucked under the wing of abnormal legend, all the odds are stacked in their favor, provided they don't make fools of themselves in the process. So Taz Abnormals is the 7th season of Taz. It is the current one where I'm currently at in like how the season has been like updating. I believe it is like almost, there's about 24 episodes out at the time of me recording this, so it's not as long as any of the other seasons of Taz. The shortest season of Taz was 30 episodes, but this one's fun. This one's different. So this one is DM'd by Travis McElroy, and they specifically designed Taz Abnormals to be a bit more focused on like making something that parents could listen to with their kids, because I think what they said is that they had like a lot of parents who listen to their show for kids. If you listen to the other seasons of Taz, then you would know that Taz generally isn't the most like kid-friendly show to listen to. Like, they're silly and they're goofy, but definitely a lot of the stuff that they do is geared towards the fact that they're adults doing a tabletop RPG show. And so, like, I think this, it definitely leads towards more of, like, being a bit more accessible to listen to with your children. So with that in mind, it is not like, if you're somebody who enjoys Taz for the story, it is not like, it has like a story, but it's not like the craziest, most complicated story like some of the other stuff is, but it is very it's very fun. I think that's like the best description for Taz Abnormals, is that it's fun. And I think that does not make it necessarily like bad in any way, that it's not like this like complicated storyline, because sometimes like a simple story can be like a lot of fun to be into. And I think Taz Abnormals is definitely that. Like, the characters are very funny. They got like they take the like whole like, we gotta keep this child safe thing to a funny level, and it's like, I think the funny level that they get to it with is very good, because like they'll try to do that like 1980s cartoons thing of like, cartoon characters look at the screen at the children and is like, hey children, don't do this thing. And I think that's just a funny way for them to do it. If you are somebody who kind of likes a simple story, something that's funny, something that isn't too long because it's still currently updating, I would recommend Taz Abnormals. It's just a fun. It's fun. That's all I can say about it. Is that it's a lot of fun, and the fact that they are like walkie-talking animals with like abs and they're like super strong isn't like weird. Like, I thought when they were like, oh yeah, we want to do a season, we're calling it Taz Abnormals, and it's gonna be about buffed like bipedal animals. I thought it was gonna get weird. I promise you, they don't make it really weird. I mean, they do weird stuff. But, like, this is also, like, the McElroy family we're talking about. Like, is it never not weird? If that sounds like something that is your vibe, I would go recommend it. Not really a whole lot I could say else of the season without getting into, like, a lot of plot stuff. But if you enjoyed this video, I will be linking, as always, any relevant sites to the Taz that I can think of that you guys may want to go check out. You should go check out Taz. I very much enjoyed it. It's still a podcast I love listening to. And as always, you can find me too. I have a webcomic. I do a bunch of stuff. I am in the middle of school hell. Help me, please. I want freedom. Okay, I'll be graduating this year, so it's fine. As always, I hope you have a good one, and bye!